Hello, everyone, and welcome to Explaining the Unexplainable. And I'm the host, Mercedes Lucky Benedict. And our other amazing host, Bishop Joshua Sparks, is not going to be available tonight. He tried his best to get here, but he's just not. He's doing some preaching and he cannot get here in time to be with our amazing guest who's been here now. This will be his second time to be here, Charles Romans. Hello, Charles Romans. How are you?
Hello, Mercedes. How are you this evening?
Burning up.
What was that?
Really, I'm burning up here in Arizona. It's 110.
Oh my! Well, you know
So,
it was
mm,
close to 100 here. The humidity is what made it worse. But now we had a storm go through, so it's bearable again.
oh,
You don't feel like you're going to incinerate like a vampire walking out in sunlight, burst into flames or anything. So,
exactly. Exactly. Well, Charles, thank you so much for being in here. And I'm so sorry that Joshua couldn't be here with us today. I know that you guys are friends. He just
oh
loves you.
yeah, Josh,
And yep.
amazing gentleman. But you don't get in the way of God. If He's out there preaching, then I don't want to be the one to disrupt that. So
No, now we need him out there spreading good messages to people.
yes,
And
definitely.
but you know what? I've gotten so used to now that he and I partnered in this. I absolutely love how he does the intros for the guests. He makes such a beautiful message for everybody. So I really wish that I had that for you today because he does so great with that. But I do want to say that you have an amazing background. You're an investigator. You're an author. You have your own show. He always makes the comment about your voice. That you have like one of the best voices in radio, or the best voices, for media.
I definitely.
So I agree with him on that. I think you have a really great voice. So tell us a little bit about yourself, or
Well,
tell the audience.
honestly, there's not really a whole lot to tell. I just enjoy talking to interesting people, and you make yourself available for a conversation. Then it's good. It's a good way to get even information you weren't necessarily looking for. I've noticed that as a reporter, if you walk up, you just start firing questions at people, then they almost freeze because it impedes the flow. They're calculating how they should answer that. But if you just start a conversation and let people talk, then you get a lot more information. So I would have to say, although I'm flattered, I'm nowhere near as interesting as the people I get to talk to.
And you've been a reporter for a long time. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, and thank you for having me on your show. It was just a few months ago, and I had such a fun time being interviewed by you. It was a wonderful interview. I appreciate that. Tell us about, when did you begin in this field? I mean, I know that's not all. I know that you're very much into paranormal, but when did you actually start uh, the original career? Was it as a child, or you like a young, when you're really youngster, like you really wanted to do that?
Oh, you mean journalism?
Yeah, just the whole, like, your path.
It wasn't even on my radar. I actually wanted to write the great American novel.
Mhm.
And of course, my version of the great American novel is fantasy and horror and stuff like that. But ironically, I got into this because one of the local newspapers, of course, looking for what they call stringers, uh, basically freelance. And my daughter had just finished her gold award for the Girl Scouts. So that was technically the first story I ever wrote for a newspaper. And once I started going out to the field and talking to people, again, it comes back to that, comes back to the stories. I thought, this is amazing that you get to talk to people, you get to share their stories with the public. And I referenced that I've talked to a lot of people that are more interesting than I am. Most people don't think they're interesting. I hear all the time, oh well, no, nobody wants to hear what I'm doing. Well, the reverse of that is absolutely true. People want to know what their neighbors are doing. So And once I started doing it, I just fell in love with it. And I couldn't really conceive of of doing anything else. I guess if I hit the lottery and become independently wealthy, maybe. But but no, probably if I hit the lottery, I would go back and fund all the projects I've talked to people about for the last 20 years.
It is it's fun to talk to people, and it is fun to get the story. I enjoy that. I enjoy talking and getting to understand what makes people tick, or how they got started, because it's always an inspiration for others, that hear what you're saying, and so they're going to be inspired. Like right now, we have Lady Warrior who just started her own show, and I met her from Bill Bean's show Warrior Mode, and then so she followed us onto the Unseen Realm, and now she's on, one of the chat people that comes on and watches this show. But she started her own podcast, so I think that's kind of a fun thing when we are able to communicate and share, and then create these podcasts. It just really helps people. So I want to definitely discuss some of your books. Let's Before we start about your amazing show, talk about some of the books that you've written.
Well, I've written a few. uh, Working on another now about my podcast. Actually, it's referenced, the podcast is, because I use the eyewitness accounts to clarify what I'm saying. It's about uh, spirits and we'll say entities, because that seems to be a good neutral term. You don't have to say it's demonic or angelic or some other spirit. You can just say entities, and get people started.
Yeah.
But most of what I've written, most of my books so far have been, I have one book that's a book of short stories called Shadows, and it's across all different genres, and that is fiction. And then I wrote a book called Shrink Your Own Head, and it's sort of a humorous take on practical philosophy. I really enjoyed writing that because I got to pull from all the people I'd talked to over the years, and that was quite amazing. I thought, because uh, I didn't want to present myself as having all the answers, but people have given me answers over the years. And as we were first starting the show here, you had said something about my voice, and there have been people that have found my voice to be pleasant, but my father and mother both would have liked to have heard a lot less of it with me growing up. So, so I guess it's perspective. Uh, and it is all about the story, and it doesn't matter whether the story is a tale that we tell ourselves, fiction made up, or whether it's an actual account, something that happened, as long as you know what you're reading at the time. I would never make something up and present it as fact, because for one thing, that's just dishonest. And you got to learn in journalism that you're really supposed to be accurate about things, or at least
Right.
not give false information.
Yeah,
So,
there's a lot of people that aren't that kind of can fabricate things. There's a lot of spinning webs around. I think integrity is really important,
yeah,
and just trying to keep the. I mean, you know what? And the truth is actually so incredible when you actually listen to what's happened to people. And can you talk about some of your experiences that have really uh, really touched your life?
you mean like from the people I've interviewed? I'm sorry, I keep moving around. Hard to
It's
get
okay.
comfortable in this chair. Plus, I fidget too. My mother constantly trying to get me to sit still, especially in church. So, but but no, yeah, I remember one specific interview. There's a gentleman from my area named Ernie West, and he's a decorated veteran and everything else. And I sat down and talked to him about what had happened. And as he's telling me this story, I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy's Forrest Gump. Because he's much more intelligent than Forrest Gump was presented in the movie, of course. But Ernie West was, very well spoken and everything. But he literally ran back into enemy fire, pulling his compatriots out there, his brothers. And at one point, he had his commanding officer over his shoulder and was firing back at the enemy with not only his rifle, but his commanding officer's rifle. I'm thinking, I just couldn't make that up. So, and I was just honestly just completely stunned and enraptured by his account. And since I don't just believe what people say, I've become something of a student of human nature. I can typically tell when people are lying, and he's telling me this, and it's all just fact. There wasn't a dishonest bone in his body, and that just amazed me that I got to hear that amazing story from Sam.
Well, tell me a little bit about your show. Tell
Well,
us, explain to the people what your show is. The Shadows of Legend.
yes, I've been a student of this since I was very young. One of the things you talked about learning about society, I discovered that you could find out a lot about a society by what made them afraid. So that was a natural segue into reading folklore, mythology, and a lot of that is what.
Love that stuff. I love folklore and mythology.
And I had wanted to do something with this for years, other than just write stories. And finally, my producer is a wonderful gentleman, Brad Bear, hyper talented himself. Uh, but I was talking to my wife. I said, I should just mention to Brad that I was wanting to do one of these shows because Brad is a media guru. If it has anything to do with media, he can do it. And my wife said, "Well, just ask him." And what most of him did say, "No, he doesn't want to with it." So I stopped by and was talking to him, and he said, "I've always wanted to do something like that." So so
I hope
anyway,
she's watching. I hope she's watching tonight because I remember last time she liked the show.
yeah, she's my biggest fan and the first critic. So she'll tell me what I mess up. Uh,
Well, hello to your sweet wife.
I'm not sure. I'm in the other room because I've had a degree of separation between us and our very large dog. And he gets excited. He makes a lot of noise. He's he's kind of a cupcake though. But but no, once Brad and I started doing this, we exchanged ideas and everything else, and it's I just snowballed from there. But I go at it from the same way I go at a news story. I go at it from the standpoint of tell me what happened, and I'll ask clarifying questions. I may offer a little bit of my own insight, but for the most part, it's the story of the person that is a guest. And it's been, I think, really rewarding because you could hear all these fascinating stories. Some of them are horrifying.
Mm.
This woman was talking about as a child. She lived in this house, and regularly at night she would look down the hallway by her bedroom, and there was this big chair. Now that chair did not exist in the house. The chair was part of what she saw, and there was a figure sitting in this chair with its head in its lap. And for a child, as an adult, I wouldn't want to see that, but as a child, it had to be horrifying. And then of course some of them are really sweet. The lady who believes that her deceased husband is still looking out for his family, and I like to think, well, given that situation, that I would do the same thing.
Hmm.
So, what do you like about stories? What
What do I like?
fascinates you?
What now?
What do you like about people's stories and the tales? What fascinates you?
Well, it I really resonate with pretty much all people I don't. I was just always like that. One of those people that I fit in with all the groups. I don't know if you, when you went to school, like if you remember, like there was cliques, right?
Mhm.
And I noticed as I went along that I seemed to always fit in. I could just kind of go into any group and fit in, and I think that helped me as far as like being able to tune in with people and their stories and their lives.
Yes.
And so uh, it seems like the originally I would listen to people or would talk to people about the acting world or the singing world or that the theater world. That was my world, right? And so I never planned on getting into paranormal. I had not planned that.
Well, I mean,
It just happened. So when I started to get out of my, we started getting help, and all of a sudden my path started going back to media. I wanted to share what was happening, but then it just ended up being where I was listening. I became the person helping too, helping people that were like myself. And so that's how, now I'm just fascinated by every type of story that people have, especially if it's, with the UFOs or the cryptids. I love all of that. I love to listen to what happened to people. So it just became a natural way. I don't know how it evolved, but that's what happened. It's like
well,
I, yeah, I became the listener, but I'm an experiencer too.
well, I think that the best storytellers actually are listeners of the story, because it can't necessarily all be about you.
Right.
And with all the different guests I've had, people might be talking about similar things, but everybody has a different delivery. And I guess that's one of the things that fascinates me is that, okay, if three people saw a ghost in the same building, how did those three people react differently?
Exactly.
Because each different reaction offers information, and information helps us overall understand better.
Right. Right. And there was a game we did a long time ago in school. I remember it was an acting class. So I think that was when I started in high school. But they would start with one story, and they the story would be whispered, passed around to, from person to person, and it was completely different by the time like 10 people got that story. So it's kind of an interesting concept how we all change just the words.
Well, definitely an inflection. Now, back in the day, of course, I mean, we're talking several hundred years ago, a lot of history is what they call oral history. But even at that, you had professional people, you can call them bards or whatever you want to call them, but professional storytellers. And it was say, you were the master storyteller and I was the apprentice. Then I would go through and I would listen to the way you told these stories and memorize these things as close to verbatim as possible.
Yeah.
And I would, when it was my turn to become the master, then I would recite people, and they kept fairly accurate records that way. But that was a very specific and focused way of doing it. It's like passing jokes around. Everybody tells a joke a little bit different, and sometimes it gets to the point where the punchlines are different. So uh, that's one of the pitfalls to oral storytelling if it's not really focused and professional.
Right.
However, if something's written down, that's why, and Josh and I have discussed this at length. This is why I have an issue, so to speak, with translations, because the more something is translated, it's like polishing a car. It gets shinier every time, but every time you polish it to increase the shine, you lose part of the finish. So in the case of a translation, then you lose a little bit because it's not machines doing it. Machines programmed to do things something exactly the same way every time. Uh, we all have a little bit of human error. So the fact that the stories survive at all is amazing. And to me, that's kind of a tribute of, yeah, there may be some truth to these stories. But the whole process is,
One of the things that I studied when I made the documentary Shadows of the Desert was um, about the stories passed down by the Hohokam.
yes,
One of their um, one of the things that was mentioned in we had an archaeologist, Al Dart, on to interview, and he was talking about how they passed their stories down through song. It was
yes,
a very big, that was, and it was so fascinating because he said that the song through song, it, if you looked at the words of a story passed through like a story, it has changes,
yes,
but the songs remain the same. And it's similar to our hymns. Like if you think about our old hymns, those hymns, I mean, they do change the hymns up, yes, but basically, we are sticking with a traditional hymn that's been passed down for years and years and years. And isn't that fascinating?
it is fascinating, and the thing of it is, the music itself functions as punctuation in a way. You've heard the joke, commas saving lives for centuries. The difference between let's eat grandma and let's eat grandma, you know. But the music serves the purpose of the punctuation. So you have almost a rigid concept of, and I know I'm not telling you anything because you're a musician, but it serves as a method of not only entertainment but cohesion as well.
Yeah,
And because honestly, in a very real way, music is its own language.
yeah, very much, very much.
And I'll throw another wrinkle into it. The irony of this, when they told all these stories about the old wizards and strange supernatural creatures, almost all of them delivered their magic through song. In fact, well, several of them, one of the ancient Welsh wizard, I believe, Talus, and I know I pronounced it wrong, but the literal translation is to speak poetry. And what is poetry but song?
Wow,
It's some strange things to appreciate.
wow. So, why do you think that is? I mean, what do you feel about that? Why do you think that happens?
Well, you can play a rhythm, but it doesn't be speak radically different languages. My wife and I, it's been several years ago, went to a powwow in Ohio, and the music itself, the rhythm of it, the Holland moved you. And it, obviously, I don't speak any Native American language, but I understood the music in a very strange way. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, that's amazing. And can you tell me, how did you meet our brother Joshua? How did you meet him?
Well, we are in the lodge together. So I just basically ran into him by accident. We started talking. I'm like, hey, we're friends. It's an connection. And you get that. And I don't know, maybe it's uh, in every case, maybe it could be a question of proximity, shared interests, or what have you. But every once in a while, you'll click with somebody and you think, that's a good person. And, uh, and, and after that, you want to talk to that person as often as you can. Interact with them and everything, and it's always a pleasant time.
He is a good person, though, that's for sure.
And sometimes I think too good. You know, uh, like I catch myself when I lose my temper, and I'm thinking, wouldn't appreciate that Josh would get on to me with a temper like that. But I used to tell people all the time. Now, keeping in mind now that I'm old and my teeth are soft, but to tell people my problem with the big seven sins, wrath, because I have used to have two tempers really. So because I get mad, then I'd lose my temper that I got mad. And here in recent memory, I was talking to a younger friend of mine, and we were talking about things like that. I said, I have a really violent temper. She said, really? I would not have thought that about you. I said, that's because I've been really good at controlling it for quite some time. But that's good people like Josh to remind you, okay, straighten up. You could be better. He's doing it. Why aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's good to have some good people to keep you, on a good level and a good frequency. And so he likes to talk a lot about the cryptids. And I know that last time, or the Sasquatch and different things, last time you were on, we got to talk a little bit about that. But not a lot. We were talking about so many things. So I was wondering if you wanted to share on your some of your experiences or writings or people you've met about um, ex- it's basically trying to explain the unexplainable.
Well, I was thinking about that. And it's funny that you mentioned cryptids because that's a good polarizing subject for what I'm about to say. Uh, I was thinking about the name of your show, explaining the unexplainable. Well, how do you go about that if it's unexplainable? How do you intend to pull that off?
I
Well,
know.
the thing of it is, you you do the best you can. You're as deliberate as you can be, rather, and you use the tools that are available.
Yeah.
But now the trap is don't become so enamored of a single tool that you forget the rest of them. Science is amazing. I'm a fan of science. I wouldn't want anybody to think that I was anti-science. I'm also a fan of spiritualism. But the thing I find in the cryptid community, uh, science, of course, is used to try to prove or disprove cryptids. But I think sometimes they get too preoccupied with the tool. Science isn't reality. Science is a tool that we use to try to explain it around. And it's a very amazing tool. And it's very effective when it's used in its proper manner. But it's not the end all be all. At the end of the day, it is just how we explain our reality. Now,
Right.
I've talked to so many people, excuse me, about cryptids. I feel fairly comfortable saying the reality of the situation is there are things out there we do not understand. People have been, again, we're talking about the old legends, people have been talking about cryptids for centuries, long before the term cryptid was ever coined. Now, the old people, they accepted it. Like the American Indians, wealth of natural. uh, Back in the day, and a lot of these Native American people, they assumed that hey, there was people, human beings, and then there were badger people, wolf people, snake people. It was all very anthropomorphic. They accepted the fact that there could be other creatures as intelligent as human beings.
Mm.
So by accepting the possibility, and this isn't to say that indigenous people just believed anything. I mean, I'm sure they were critical thinkers themselves, but they were more accepting of the possibility of what could be rather than our expectation of what was. Sasquatch, of course, Bigfoot is the ultimate granddaddy of cryptids, the reigning champion, hide and seek champion. Yeah, every year for the last 10,000 years. And I've discussed Bigfoot, Sasquatch with people from all over the world. People in Australia are seeing these people. Great Britain are seeing people in Alaska, people in, well, all over the world. Well, there are some similarities, but once they see these things, and to them it is a reality. So it becomes more difficult for them to explain to other people that, well, yeah, I saw this 8 foot creature that was broad as a barn and twice as hairy, and out in the woods doing his own thing. Most people are going to say, yeah, that's a little insane. Well, it takes someone who lives in, we'll just say New York City, city made of concrete and steel and glass. Um, Not sure exactly how many green spaces are out there.
Yeah.
Their experience is more what we'll just call it. The odds of seeing a Bigfoot in the city are almost infinitesimal. But where I live, there's a lot of trees. There's a lot of
Yeah.
hollows, and as a matter of fact, I use this a lot. I say that I smoke, so my wife's allergic to it. So I walk outside to smoke. So if I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll go out and smoke a cigarette. So I'm standing on my front porch. Now the main road is fairly close, but I can look over to my right side, and there's a field that goes on for a mile. There's nothing in this field, nothing but trees.
Mm.
And uh, behind my house, there are houses back in there, but my house is surrounded by a green bubble. So I got there and I smoked a cigarette. It's me and the cat. And I hear something crashing in the field, and I think it's a deer. And I've precedent things. I've seen deer run out of it before. But I don't really know. I can't smell it. And I'm really not sure my ears are interpreting that correctly. For all I know, Bigfoot and Mothman are sitting out there having a tea party 100 yards from my house. I don't really know. Now, the other side, and this is, of course, uh, I walk out sometimes, I light the cigarette, and I look at the cat looks at me, and there's something making noise out in the field. Suddenly, the cat gets a little uncomfortable, and I finish my cigarette and I go back in the house because I know it's not a deer out in the field, even though it still sounds like.
Mm. And they're very aware of the who is there. I'm sure they're very aware of everything about you
Well,
and
yeah, they've,
your thoughts too.
uh, and it's amusing too because a lot of times, now I sleep like a rock, uh, but my wife will hear something walking in the garage making those snuffling noises like this. Don't really know if it's Bigfoot, might be a deer. Dog really doesn't like it though. Just stand up in bed and look at the window and growl, real low in his throat. But so far, nobody's actually knocked on the door.
Hmm.
But this is the South. If Bigfoot would knock on the front door and say, "Hey, what's up? Come on in. You want a bologna sandwich?" Because we're accommodating in the South. We don't want anything to go hungry or anything like that. So far, he hasn't put in his dinner order.
Well, do you think does being out there like you're because we're out in the country too, and but we're not surrounded with forest. I've got my little forest, but we're pretty much wide open. So seeing anything like that here has not occurred. But of course, we've experienced so many other things. Uh, have you experienced like the extraterrestrial, the UFO type experiences over in that area too? I believe that they're combined. I believe that this they come together, they work together. I believe that they go in portals, the Sasquatch, the cryptids. I mean, I totally believe that.
Well,
I mean, I see the portal things, so I know that they can time travel through portals.
Well, the author John Keel wrote The Mothman Prophet,
Yes, yes, yes.
and he kind of postulated a couple things. One thing was that uh, whenever you had a big UFO fly, you also had Bigfoot sightings. And he implied that the extraterrestrials were dropping off Bigfoot to distract humans from what they were doing.
I mentioned that in my documentary because we are in missile silo sites, and that's in my documentary. And we actually they're talking about John Keel, so that's interesting. You brought that up. Yeah, I
One of them
believe that.
was
And
that,
water too. There's
oh,
like
yeah.
bodies of water.
Well, these are the pathways. I mean, it's been times. Any kind of major civilization is a red flag. Waterways are, well, I mean, they connect everything. Human animal has evolved to the point where we make our own water.
Hmm.
And we don't have to live right at the edge of a river anymore. But still, those are major arteries. It's like today, I was talking to the judge executive in my county just the other day, and we were talking about infrastructure. And it's the same thing that would attract aliens, attract businesses. And we need to get some aliens that want to open a business here in Grant. That would be awesome. I would patronize that business. But no, uh,
Hey, aliens, extraterrestrials, please tune in.
that's it. Yeah, we'll give you a tax break. But no, you're saying, you've got river, you've got rail, and you've got a communications hub. That's what you need really to
Right.
attract businesses. Now, where I live out here, I have well, it's a mile short of being a river. It's called Tigert's Creek, and it pretty much is on two sides of my house. Ironically, there's another creek right across the road from me, and then down the road, just a couple of miles, is Tennessee Gas Plant. This big hub that.
Mm.
So really, yeah, I'm surrounded by all of it. And over the years, there have been different times when people have reported seeing lights over the gas plant. So there have been sightings of veterans. And,
That's,
you know, well, I think maybe sometimes we see aliens and we don't really know we've seen them,
yeah.
especially since in the day so big. And wonderful things like this device I'm talking. Because if I wasn't talking to you, I'd be looking at me. You know, I won't say I'm too bad, or rather bad enough to where I would walk into a light pole. But yeah, we can become oblivious, talking, looking at our own, uh, I guess, first. But there's I all the time. Well, uh, now that you mentioned that, I thought, Bigfoot could be out in the field right now, but the field could be full of aliens too. I don't know. It's dark out there. I can't see.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, the movie about Bigfoot in Arkansas came on. Remember
Mhm.
that movie? It was the famous movie, but I was a kid, and I remember my grandpa. So it was in Arkansas, and it was the Boggy Creek, the
Yes.
legend of Boggy Creek. And I remember watching that, and my grandpa lived in Arkansas, so we would visit the farm, which, was in the middle of nowhere, with forest everywhere. So it was scary, but he would talk about things. He would talk about stuff when we go. We had horses, and we'd ride and go around the forest. But I remember people would be talking about that with him sometimes, about what was in the woods there. I
Mhm.
wish he was still alive and I could ask him, but he died when I was 11. So I never really got to finish talking to him.
I used to, my grandfather, my Mother's Day was an amazing talk about the theme and whatnot. Terrifying stories for a little kid, but fascinating. And you could, You could tell that he had been all over the world. Uh, But even he would say that you won't see anything. Something out there just want you to see it. He never really talked to Bigfoot, but I was under the impression that yeah, he had seen that it wasn't.
Hmm. Well, so we I can't believe how quickly this show has gone. I want to make sure that we talk about what your future projects are and
Well,
where can people find you.
okay. Future projects. I want to continue doing more of the same for one thing because it's just fascinating. Every story is different. You know, uh, I honestly believe that you could have 10 children read the Three Little Pigs to you, and you get 10 different stories, and they'd all be fascinating. So, not that I want to, imply that these stories are somehow juvenile. It's just that the flavor is different every time somebody says something, and uh, people's perception.
Right.
Like some people might notice the smell, some people might notice the sound or lack thereof in these sightings. I talked to this one gentleman. He came out of his tent and walked straight in, not almost into
Oh,
what you have to call a dog man. And he said he just closed his eyes. And I'm like, I could never do that. You know, I walk out in something that looks like a werewolf, I'll instantly go into fight or flight. And since I don't run very fast, I'd be looking for a ball bat. Yeah, but I mean, who does that? And but he seemed to be very credible. And he obviously didn't kill him because we spoke about the incident, and uh, and other people talking about hearing things, being terrified, and going home. I don't fault people for that. If you hear something here that might potentially cause you physical harm, yeah, discretion's the better part of valor. So always I would like to uh, hear more stories. I discuss these, but I like to put together some sort of database uh, to help people understand that we don't know what's out there. We try to find, and of course, in coming up, I've got working on uh, my book that's based on my and first book is I'm planning to make it a series. The first book is about spirits and ghosts, and that's been interesting to work on because uh, one thing, if all this knowledge is, and until you pull it all out and sort through it, you kind of don't know what you know until you look. Or and there's always a the possibility that you get jaded. I grew up working on cars with my dad, and most of the things I'd done hundreds of times. Well, I had a shop in this little community called Westwood, and some of my friends would come over there and they would look at all the stuff. Oh, this is cool. This is interesting. How do you do that? And I'm thinking, I've done it 300 times. It's kind of boring, but their excitement, their interest uh, caused a resurgence in my own interest. Oh, yeah, this is cool. So if you keep that influx of new information and new perspective, it's fun. But uh, I'd just like to be involved in this in any way possible because the entire field is fascinating. I need to get Josh on the show because we need to talk about exorcisms. Uh, that's thing, dangerous.
yeah.
Something.
Well, yeah, it has been a fascinating journey being part of the unseen realm and learning. I mean, not only did we experience exorcisms with Bill Bean,
Mm.
but and deliverance.
Yes.
But it was through the unseen realm that I really, I mean, just like I'm like right in it. I'm knee deep in it now with what they do, and it's just amazing to me the dedication that I have found. I mean, I thought it was more like TV, like the TV when you see the exorcists from the
Oh,
TV or the movies, but it is not. It's like there are real boots on the ground people across the country, different states, different countries that are just amazing people, amazing, kind, good, integrity, loving people that are out there fighting the good fight. And I'm so thankful to be a part of that. So, yeah, I think we'll mark that down when you come back next. And I want to mark you in our calendar to have you come back more regularly. Now that we've got it rolling,
I'll
I
try
think,
to get as erratic next time.
yeah, and he better show up this next time. We're going to say no preaching on that night. But I know God calls, he's got to go.
Well,
But we did great. We don't
it,
need him here with, we got plenty to talk about.
there's always something to talk about, and it's fascinating to me. Josh would be a good uh, interview on that because
Yeah.
people have believed in negative spirits for centuries, pretty much as long as there's been people. But with the church, has recorded these things over the years,
Yeah.
or volume, right?
Yeah.
But
And
I'd like to dig that out and sort through all that stuff.
yeah, yeah. I believe he's finishing up his new book, so I'm not quite sure what all is going to be covered in that book, but I'm sure there's a book coming where he can talk about that work. Um, so yeah, so I really want to have you back, and we'll get you. I'll get you scheduled on for a little few weeks down the road, and we'll get you back to talk some more, and
That
it'll be great.
And in the meantime, I'll just go ahead and put in a plug for one of my favorite conventions, the Scarefest. It'll be in October in Lexington. And I touched a little bit on this earlier, but I'll be giving a talk there on Sunday evening about how people use either science or spiritualism to explain the supernatural. So that'll be fun. I'll enjoy that. And hopefully by the time I get there, I'll have my book ready. That's what I'm typing.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll definitely be talking about all that then, and I'll get some links and put that in to our chat,
Okay.
so we can have the links for that. And thank you so much for being here.
Always a pleasure. And thank you again for being on my podcast because I think we had a good time and we covered a lot of ground. There's some fascinating things I haven't.
Well, I'm so excited because my book is out now.
Yes.
So and it's weird because people are reading it. So I'm just like you're reading it. Oh my gosh. Okay, but people are liking it, and the two books are doing well. I mean, people are liking what I wrote. So I definitely want to get I want to order your books. I haven't ordered them yet. I'm sorry about that, but they do sound absolutely fascinating. So I definitely want to order those.
Well,
And we can order those on Amazon, right? Or do you have a specific website?
yeah, you should be able to get them from Amazon. I'll tell you the same thing I told my friend Eric earlier. He ordered one of my books. He said, "Hey, your book come in. I'm going to read it this weekend or on next week on my business trip." I said, "Okay, if you like it, I'll autograph it for you." But I really enjoy telling stories.
Yeah.
I enjoy sharing. So I just being part of the process.
Well,
It,
you're
it's
just a wonderful.
my
Yeah.
Matt.
No, you're just awesome. I'm so glad to know you. So we've got that set, everybody. He's going to be coming back again in the very near future. So we've got Charles Romans, and we're so excited that you're here tonight. And I just want to say thank you to Stan Fikes and Teresa Fikes of the Web Radio Network for having producing this show that we're on here, explaining the unexplainable. And next week we have Ann Bender and her husband David Bender. Anne has got some amazing books out that she's written, and she's going to be in an upcoming Paracon in California. So she'll be here next week. It sounds like it's going to be really neat Paracon, which I'd love to go to. This one. It's going to be on a ship close to like San Francisco, and I can't remember. It's a nautical thing. It sounds so fun. So she'll be on next week, and we look forward to talking to her and her husband about their paranormal business and their activities that they go through and experience. So we've got Ann Bender and David Bender coming next week. And thank you so much for being with us, Charles.
You're very welcome.
God bless you.
God bless you too. You have a
God
wonderful
bless everybody. Good night, everybody. Thank you.